do those scary mindsets, do they apply? If no, and that's often the case, then it's time to rewire your brain about money, because now you're in a relationship and things are different. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Talk Love with Carol show. And today we're talking about money. Is it your friend or your enemy? Which is kind of a strange question, but anyway, it's really a topic that just thinking about money causes anxiety in lots of people. And that's definitely not reserved for people who don't have enough money. Even very wealthy people worry about money, and they, like all of us, have a pretty complex relationship with money. So that's what we're talking about today, because it's such a big deal in relationships. So I'm Dr. Carol Henry, psychologist and relationship coach, and I've been working with couples for 35 years, and I've heard a lot and I've learned a lot about people's relationship with money. And of course, I have a relationship with money myself. So we're all in this together. In relationships, this is not just my experience, but the experience of lots of people, and there's research about this. Money is the thing that more couples argue about, and they argue about it more often than any other topic, including parenting, their sex life, anything else, because money is power. So, and our relationship with money, our ideas and our thoughts about it really run deep, and they're strong. And so a lot of people have a hard time talking about it. So we're gonna try to unpack that today. So I'm definitely not a financial planner. I'm a psychologist. So my contribution to people's money issues is that I help them talk about money, figure out how to manage themselves around money. And see what I said there? Manage themselves around money. Of course, that entails managing money too. But really, the way we do that is first we manage ourselves, and we figure out our thoughts and how we behave around money. And then we can manage our money way better. So we're going to today unpack some of the main issues about money and make some plans about how to talk about it. So first, I want to say our ideas about money were learned from our parents first, and maybe for a lot of people, other experiences with money. But that first thing is what our parents taught us. And they weren't necessarily talking about money. Well, they were probably talking about it, but they weren't trying to teach us about money. But we learned anyway. So if money was short in your family, there was worry. There was a lot of focus on getting more money. There's not enough. There's resentment. There's anger. If there was enough money, there was worry, the feeling of not enough, resentment, and anger. You see? Same. And if money was way more than enough, Add suspicion to that list, uncertainty, and worry about, and thinking there's not enough, and resentment and anger. And what I mean by suspicion is that for people that are very wealthy, they wonder, does this person like me because I've got a lot of money, or do they like me for me? Do they want me to join their club because of me or because of my money? That kind of thing. So that's what I mean by suspicion. So did any of these things happen in your childhood? You go to school shopping with your mom and you want an expensive item. Let's say a pair of jeans from some expensive brand. She gets it for you. She buys it. And then she says, don't tell your father what it costs. So what does that teach you? So some of the things that I know that I got taught was, or at least the idea, be sneaky about money. Or I also thought, my mom is sneaky about money. Also, spending money is spending too much money, or spending money at all is bad. You know, we don't know when we're kids. We don't know what exactly we're learning, but there's something about that in there. Another thing is you can buy whatever you want, even if you can't afford it. Right? And what else? You think about that. What else? If that kind of thing happened to you, don't tell your father, don't tell your mother about this thing we just did with money. What does that teach you? So here's another scenario. You hear your parents talking and arguing about money. They're saying they can't pay a credit card bill and that's really bad. They've run out of money. One of them has lost their job. They're anxious and they're talking about bad things. You might lose the house. You might have to move to a different apartment. So that scenario, probably not all those things, but a few of them. So what does that teach you? Money is scary. Money can disappear. And sometimes through no fault of your own, it can just disappear. I mean, obviously we can spend it, but the source of money disappears. We could lose everything if we lose money. So what else? And I'm talking about things that might reside in you, thoughts that you might have that are just can somehow, their mindsets, their ways you might think of the world. So here's another one. If your family has a lot of money and you get almost everything you want, and you don't have to do chores and you don't have to earn it or get good grades or anything else, you just have you maybe have your father or mother's credit card and you can use it whenever you want. There's another scenario. So what do you learn with that? All of these things, these experiences I'm talking about, are part of your history of money, of your money mindsets, of your money beliefs and habits of thinking about money. So why are we focusing on this first? We have to understand the way we think about money so that we begin to be aware of what we're thinking and why. Then next, we decide whether in our current situation, at this point in time, with your specific set of circumstances right now, do you agree with your learned thoughts about money? Do they apply? Are they helping you? Do you think they're valid here? For example, if you grew up with not enough money and now you have plenty of money, I'm not, but let's just say plenty of money, whatever that is to you. Do those scared mindsets that worry about money, do they apply? So what are we thinking and why? And do we really believe that now? And if yes, that's great. Maybe your mindsets are very applicable to now. But if no, and that's often the case, then it's time to rewire your brain about money. Because now you're in a relationship. That's not the only reason. It's just because you're in now. You're not back in there, in your childhood, and things are different. In your relationship, you're accountable to your partner to take into account their ideas about money, and they have to take into account your ideas about money. And you can count on those ideas being different from each other in many ways. In some ways, they may well be the same or very similar, but that's where the arguments come in. Because we really believe that our way of looking at money is the right way. Because that's how we learned to do it. Your partner thinks their way of looking at money and thinking about money is the right way because that's what they learned. So now in a relationship, because now we've got disparate ways of looking at it, it's time to really understand your own, number one, which is why we talked about all that stuff. And number two, understand your partner's way of thinking about money and looking at money. Understand a bit of why, and understand a lot of what they think, which of course requires us to know what we think first. All right. So the way you think about it and why is important, and so is the idea of upgrading your thinking. Thinking, being able to upgrade to this particular point in time. Listen to your partner about theirs. So one of the most important kinds of conversations you'll have is this one. About what are your values? What do you think? And I think this, you think this. How are we going to align those? How are we going to compromise? How are we going to really take into account and think about our partner and their beliefs? And while at the same time being open to alter ours. I don't mean just agree with them unless it's amazing in your idea, theirs. But mostly what it comes down to is, so how can we get enough of me in here and you in here that we both are satisfied with what we've agreed to? That conversation is going to have a huge impact on how your life goes forward. The house you buy, or the next house you buy, the car or cars you buy, the toys that you have. And I'm not talking about Legos here. I'm talking about toys that really cost money, like, I don't know, snowmobiles, something like that. what the kids get, how you parent the kids about money. Do they get an allowance? And what do they have to do for that allowance, if anything? And what's the point of the allowance? Because one of the points of allowance is to teach kids to manage money. But first you got to know how you manage money and how you manage yourself around money. So then, and another thing, your attitude about money as a family. That's ultimately what you want to do. How do we think about money? How do we interact with money? How do we manage ourselves around money? If you can have a successful conversation about money, it sets the stage for success in life. That may be putting a lot of effort, a lot of attention and focus on money, but that's what we're talking about today, and it's so very important. Without that, there's all these arguments, resentments, complaints that bleed over into so many other areas of your relationship. So I'm going to give you an idea of what you can do. Just to summarize what we've said so far is, first, you have to think about what you learned about money from your family. Not necessarily what they were trying to teach you, but what they did teach you. Because that example I gave when your parents were, if that happened, that the parents are talking about money and talking about scary things like we might lose the house, or one of us just lost our job or something like that. They don't necessarily know that you heard it, and number two, aren't having that conversation to teach you anything, but they are teaching you something. So what's your money history? What's your relationship with money history? And it has to do with security and, just kind of what's money for, all of those things. So first you think about that, and then you connect with your partner, and the two of you talk about your own experiences about money and your own ways you think about it at this point in time. And the one who's not speaking at that moment is listening carefully to understand, not to say, well, that's wrong, in either aloud or in your head, but wow, okay, let me, I've got to take this in. I've got to understand this, because that's your beloved partner, right? You need to understand them and how they look at it. And then, and only then, and this is probably in a different conversation, because ideally you're going to you're each going to talk about this, about yourself. Here's what I learned, and here's how I see money, and all that. And then you think about it for a while, maybe a week or a few days. This isn't an emergency. This is something that's foundational for your life together. And then you come back and you talk about money and how you want to manage it as a couple, as a family, having been informed about what you heard from the other person. And when you give yourself that time to think about it, it's just so amazing how much easier it is to really have the conversation. Well, you think this and I think that. But now I understand why that's important to you. So I can make sort of compromises, or I can account for that. So that often comes up for people when they're talking about saving versus, like, what do we do when we want to buy, let's say, a new car or a different car? Do we take a loan out and get the car now and pay for it later? Or do we save money and then buy it when we get enough money? What would be a compromise with that? Maybe we save half of it, get out a smaller loan and pay it. Or maybe the reason that one partner likes to save money first makes enough sense to the other person that you agree to do that. No matter what comes from the conversation, what you're doing is coming from a place where you've really truly listened to each other. So that's an example of how you can avoid arguments. Certainly avoid really bad arguments. Use what you've learned and understood about each other to soften your approach, to understand why somebody does think the way they do, and then be ready to take your partner's ideas into account. So that's an example of how you can really use in the most loving, compassionate way your understanding of each other's money approach, money management, and managing themselves around money. Without that step where you're really, really looking into your own heart and your own mind about it, and your own history, without that step, you have these, I was going to say crazy, but since I'm a psychologist, I don't want you to think I'm talking about literally crazy, but sort of these really, what I consider very sad arguments, and sometimes even pointless, about should we buy a new dining room table, or, and like, oh, you're too stingy, or you spend, money like crazy, and why do you spend so much, and all these things that really aren't getting at the heart of it. They're just the symptoms of not having really understood each other and come up with ideas about how we should do this. So you want to first understand one another, and then all the other things are going to come better after that. Okay, so that's what I have to say about money today. Again, I'm not your financial planner, of course. No surprises there. But as a psychologist and a relationship coach, I do help people, and I've heard I do help people around money, and I've heard so many really bad arguments, and also some when people really take that time to listen to each other and to understand, so many wonderful things come out, and these wonderful compromises, these wonderful plans that take each into account. So if you want more help with this, you can contact me, and we can talk about, is what I have to offer what you're needing around this. And the way to contact me is through email is a good way. And it is Carol J. Henry carolphd@gmail.com. So just carolJHENRYPHD@gmail.com. That's number one. That's the easiest way to contact me. Number two, I want to invite you to join my Facebook group called Committed Couples Growing Together. And that's a free Facebook group where you get tips and tricks and first chance to get a challenge or whatever I'm offering at the time. The first chance to hear about it. And in that group, people help each other. They answer each other's questions, or they pose questions. It's really a group of people that are like-minded people that want to make the relationship even better. So that's another thing. So Committed Couples Growing Together. And thanks for listening. I'm going to be back next week. And I hope I'll see you then. All right. Take care and love well. Bye.